Good morning, St. Peter's, and welcome to our devotion this morning. We look at Revelation 20. Revelation 20 has this period of 1,000 years. But in order to understand what's going on here, we need to understand the context of what Revelation 20 is all about. Revelation 20 is all about vindication of God's people. If you go back to the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets and the 7 bowls, we see each time a pattern. And what the pattern is, we see 5 or 6 of the seals, bowls and trumpets, which show judgment. And then we have this pausing, this moment of pause. And in that moment of pause, we have God's people who are being tested and shown to be truly God's people if they witness to God in this world. And also a protection of God's people. They're sealed. And then we have the 7th and final judgment. And this story is repeated again and again through the seals, through the trumpets, through the bowls. This pattern of judgment, God's people tested, and then we have vindication, and then final judgment. And what chapter 20 is doing is it's this part of vindication that's been extended and being shown. And when we understand that, that helps us understand exactly what's going on with this whole 1,000-year thing where we have pre-millennials, post-millennials and amillennials and all this kind of thing. Let's go through the passage and I think it'll become a bit clearer, at least hopefully, to what John's trying to tell us. In the first part of chapter 20, verses 1 to 5, we see an angel coming down out of heaven, holding the key to the abyss, and then he seizes the dragon. Now earlier, remember, and he throws the dragon into the abyss. And he locks it and seals it for 1,000 years, which 1,000 years is symbolic of a long time. Now, remember in chapters 19 and 18 we saw, at the end of chapter 19 I should say, we saw the beast captured and the false prophet. Here at the start of chapter 20 we see the devil captured and thrown to the abyss. This is the unholy trinity which we've seen in the middle of Revelation of the beast, the false prophet and the devil. It's the fake, counterfeit Trinity. And so we see the unholy Trinity and we see the devil thrown into the abyss, destruction of evil. And it says there, he's there till the 1,000 years ended. Now when we hear that 1,000 years, we think, okay, it's 1,000 years and then he'll come back out. And this is a symbol of meaning a long time. Really kind of meaning, well, not about forever, but a long time. And so then we see verses 4 and 5, thrones on which those who are seated are being given authority to judge the souls of those who have beheaded because of their testimony of Jesus. Verse 4, who had not received the mark of the beast, but instead, of course, had the mark of Jesus. And they come to life and they reign. This is vindication. They had died, the beast had conquered them, and they had been they died for their faith and their witness and their testimony. But in the end, they will reign. It says they will reign for that 1,000 years. They will reign for a long time. It's vindication. And then after this, verses 7 to 10, we have the 1,000 years are over, and Satan comes out and is released and gathers for a battle. But did you notice in verses 9 and 10, there's no real war. They march across the breadth of the earth, surrounded by the camp of God's people and the city he loves. But fire comes down from heaven and devours them. And the devil is thrown into the lake of burning sulfur. There's no actual battle. And the reason why is because the battle's already been won. The 1,000-year reign is God's people, and it's at the end, and it's God's people vindicated. And the whole point of this 1,000-year thing is because in the Old Testament, John has taken a Jewish tradition of a temporary messianic reign on earth before the last judgment and the new creation. But what he's done is he's depicted an essential aspect of the concept of the victory of the martyrs over the beast. What I'm saying is this: John, there's this idea in the Old Testament of God's people reigning forever, 1,000 years, a long time. And John is taking that image of the 1,000-year reign, which we see in Daniel 7, if you want to pause and you read Daniel 7. He's taking the 1,000-year reign and he's saying, this is what's going to happen. God's people will be vindicated, and there is nothing that will stop them from reigning over God's creation. And then it says in verses 11 to verse 15. Then I saw a great white throne, and to him who was seated on it, earth and sky fled from his presence. And the book was opened, and there's judgment, and each person is judged according to what they've done. And anyone who is not found written in the book of life is thrown into the lake of fire. I think this millennium thing is really distracting for a lot of people, because people take it literally and then think, okay, is it before, is it after? Or people take it just symbolically. The point of the millennium in this passage is to show, and to John's taking it and connecting it with further vindication of God's people who have died for the faith and who have witnessed to Jesus and who have persevered to the end. So I don't think there will be another period when the devil will come back down and deceive more people, and there'll be this rapture. Rather, it's about 1,000-year reign, a reign of God's people that will vindicate, that God's people have been vindicated, and that God will, in the end, throw all evil into the lake of fire. There's no competition, there's no war, there's no actual battle. God has won, and he will vindicate, and he will discern and throw all evil into the lake of fire. Clear as mud? That's Revelation 20. Tomorrow and the next day we get into the vision of the new heavens and the new earth, which thankfully is some good stuff to give us some respite from the horrifying images of 17 through to 20. See you then.